Hello, I'm your host, Kathy Chester, and welcome to the Move It or Lose It podcast, a podcast about all things that move the mind, body, and soul. The Move It or Lose It podcast is for information, awareness, and inspirational purposes only. I am not a doctor, and I don't even play one on TV. So please consult with your doctor before making any medical decisions. The views expressed by advertisers, guests, or contributors are their opinions and not necessarily the views of the Move It or Lose It podcast. Hello, welcome to another segment of Move It or Lose It podcast. So I know I say this often, but this guest I have wanted on for a very long time. We all know and love Ardra Shephard. So Ardra, thank you so much for being on my show today. I've been thrilled and very excited to have you.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here. I feel like I'm on the lose it end of move it or lose it. I'm sucking at physio lately, but maybe I will leave this conversation feeling inspired.
Good. Maybe you can do one with me and we'll do it like a shared collaboration one. You can do, we'll do a seated workout. That's been the best ones.
No one needs to see that. No one needs to see that.
Stop. Everybody gets afraid and then they do it. They're like, that was not nearly as scary as they thought. So
I'm sure.
Tell me about, first off, you just came back from a vacation. How was it?
It was really good. I feel like we think of rest in general as luxuries, but you do heal when you are resting, and even just to recharge creatively and professionally, it's really important. So,
I mean, you've got a lot of stuff going on, so you really needed that rest time. Now, what was the time change for you?
It was 1 hour.
Okay. So not too bad.
No, and it was the right way, right? Like we went to Mexico, so we gained an hour. When we got there, which was nice.
Oh yeah, I know. My last one was in LA, and I struggled. Not there, I did wonder, but you never do there because it's all exciting. And then coming home,
it's harder going east than going west.
Correct. So coming back home east, I was like, I'm cold. It's winter again. I was like, I want sun and summer. So I do think you're right. Like that hour isn't as bad, but when it's like a 4 or 5 hour, it's like, So coming back, I'm sure you're running into all the crazy busy. So you got picked up for a second season of.
I did.
Yes. So tell us about that. Tell us about just getting started with fashion. It's called fashion.
I love how you're talking about this show as if everyone has seen it, but it's
I say that every time.
I know.
So when I talk about
it's so sweet, but it's it's a Canadian television show. It's called Fashion Dis. It's a lifestyle series. It's a makeover series actually that was created and hosted by me, and it features people with disabilities. So yes, our second season premieres on May 3rd.
Yes.
And I'm really, really excited. This season is.
I bet. Yeah. So when you even thought about like, where did the concept even come from when you were like, I mean, you and I have talked a bit, obviously, about like how the disabled, there's nothing for them. We never feel like, oh, that outfit's for me. It fits perfect. It's going to fit around my AFO. I'm going to look glamorous. So, and then you're talking about getting into chairs and stuff, and what is there for us and how much are we highlighted? Never.
Yeah.
So when did you become bold enough to say, I'm doing this? No one's doing it. I'm doing it.
It's really interesting because the landscape of fashion and representation and accessible and universal design in fashion and beauty products is exploding and has changed so much in the last like 2 or 3 years. Every year it's exponentially more. So, but my idea for this show happened several years ago when I started moving from relapsing-remitting MS to secondary progressive, and I started to need mobility aids, I was looking for disabled style icons or somebody to
Right.
like emulate, and I couldn't find anything. So, things are much, much different now,
Right.
but my initial idea for the show wasn't necessarily about highlighting all the amazing um, designers that are working in accessible fashion, which the
Right.
show definitely does. But for me, the initial impetus was for representation. I was like, where are the models in magazines or just people
Right.
who, because there's actually a lot of us, and
Yeah.
I just felt like erased from that conversation, and just wanting to reclaim the narrative a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, their faces after. I
Yeah.
mean, my gosh, I was crying. I was just like, wow, like they've never felt like that before. They've never had that feeling of like, I'm beautiful or I can be handsome. I can feel comfortable in my skin. And it was just
Yeah,
really overwhelming.
I think it's, when you have never had access to clothing that was made for you, it can feel like you don't have a right to be in this space or to belong in this space.
Right.
So we have a woman on season 2. She is a Black young woman with dwarfism, and
Okay.
she's the only one in her family with
Wow.
dwarfism. So she's literally never seen another Black woman with dwarfism. Like, she's never
Wow.
seen anyone that looks like her represented in style, in beauty, like her mom. Like, she's never had this example. And also, like, she's never had clothes that are made for her. Like, what do you tell
Wow.
yourself? Right? What do
Yeah.
you tell yourself about, I don't know. She's so confident. She's so cool. And
I love that.
it's so exciting to just give her this experience, shine the light on her, give her the
Yeah.
photo shoot, the full makeover. And yeah, like, because she deserves to be seen. And also just then that feeling of, other young girls who look like her, like having her as an example to say, like,
Right.
she's cool. I can be cool too.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to even like Tyler Campbell when I interviewed him the first time and, people like him talking about like how he'd never seen anyone like him. And so I think what you're doing is so important because so many of our autoimmune are sick, all of it. It's like you didn't just pick one thing. You pick people who struggle with not knowing anyone like them, never seen anyone like them that have been like, oh, okay, like, oh, these are cute outfits. I can go to Nordstrom and look at this whole section for me. So I think like what Tyler was saying, I never saw a Black man that had what I had. All I saw were white, middle-aged or younger women that had this disease. And
Yeah.
so I think what you're doing is so excellent. How do you go in and decide who the people are going to be that you choose for the season?
Yeah, so the makeover candidates, it's really exciting, the variety of people that have applied to be on the show. And it's a real challenge, actually, when there is so little representation. It's hard to pick. I mean, we need many, many, many seasons of this show just to be able to demonstrate all the different ways that there are to
Right.
be disabled, but like all these really cool stories and beautiful people. And just it's interesting to shine a light on some of the obstacles that people with disabilities have when it comes to clothing. It's not obvious, and
Yeah.
it's not something that I was aware of until I
Right.
needed some of these things myself. And even then, I don't need I mean, we all have different needs. So
Right.
it's cool to see how many brands are embracing this, and
Yeah.
mainstream brands, and
Yeah.
how the options are just getting better all the time. It's
Oh
really
yeah.
exciting.
I was doing also, which I love too, like, we're talking about clothing and stuff like that. But what I found fascinating as well is just when you want to be sexy with your spouse or something, it's like, okay, I loved that. I loved it that they're doing more and more with negligee and sexy things for us to be able to put on that fits when you're in a chair, when things aren't working. You can't get your arm into something. You can't get your leg into something. It's like, yeah, I feel super sexy now. Let's go. So I really
I have
appreciate that.
definitely said, can you help me take my pants
Yes.
off in a non-sexy way more than once? Like when you
Oh
are
yeah.
trapped in your clothes, it's the
Right.
worst.
It's like, help me get this on. My arm's stuck, everything's stuck. And the sexiest that I can be, it's like, you know what? I'm just going to be naked because it's just not working.
We have made clothes unnecessarily complicated,
Oh, for
like
sure.
buttons and latches and
Yes.
everything's
Yes.
tight and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go backwards now. So one funny thing you said in the questions I asked you. So pre-disease, pre-MS fun, you wanted to be an opera singer and you said for real. So I wouldn't
Yeah,
joke or
no,
laugh at
not
you.
funny at all. It was like my dream.
So you are a singer, you can sing.
Well, I could. I could at
So
some
you want to
like
like go for it now? You want me to?
absolutely not. I think
Oh, dang it.
one of my like the last relapse that I had was one of the more devastating ones because I had already really stopped being able to sing from a stamina
Yeah.
point of view. But the last attack I had affected my speech and swallowing. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you can't super tell unless you have a really trained ear when I'm speaking.
Right.
Usually when I get tired, it sometimes does
Yeah.
crap out. But I mean, that was a really gutting thing to lose the ability to sing.
Yeah.
But and I will say that singing was so important to me for so long. There was definitely a time when I thought I couldn't live without singing.
Yeah.
And it was a surprise of my life, really, to discover that I could find other ways to be creative that were just as fulfilling. And so I encourage, people with MS, whatever MS takes from you, instead of focusing on the thing that it took, like for me, singing is one example,
Right.
like to focus on the feelings that you get from doing that thing. So for me,
Right.
like singing was about communicating, storytelling, a little bit of showing off, like performing,
Right.
all of these things. It's like, what's another way to access those feelings? Like, what's something else I can do that is
Right.
going to give me the same kind of results? So,
I like that. I love that. I often will say similar things like when I'm training someone with MS or an autoimmune disease, especially the men, I'm not dogging on the men, but they'll want to go back. And it's a really big, it takes them down. I want to go box. I want to go do weights like I did before. And so I'll often say, let's go back to something you haven't done before and let's
sure.
try that.
Yeah.
Because the stuff that we've done before can often be so depressing that we can't go back and do it. So if we could try something new, then we're not looking back to, how do I say it? We can't compare it. I guess what I'm saying.
I absolutely love that. And I think it's important to leave yourself open to the possibility that there are things that you haven't considered that,
Right.
that might be awesome. And I know I joked earlier about my laziness, but I recently discovered therapeutic horseback riding, and
Yeah,
that's something that's really awesome. And
absolutely.
yeah, it's something really different, like I'm
Yeah.
not doing like cardio aerobics stuff
Right.
anymore, but
Right.
yeah, I've like found a different way. You're right. It's
Yeah,
about looking forward and yeah, finding ways to reinvent.
for sure. And that's such a big thing. And it sometimes can be so difficult to change our thinking on that, to do something new. But I think that's why someone like you and gives so much hope. And I think that the speaking that you do, I love the podcast that you're doing. I think it's smart that you're doing it once a month, or you'd go crazy. You would have no time
Even
to
once a
breathe.
month. Oh my God, it's so much work. I don't know how anyone does it more
Well,
than
I
that.
had stopped doing it once a week because I was going mad. And so now I'm doing it every 2 weeks. And so once a month, I think you're doing great at that.
Thank
So
you.
how did you decide to go into the podcast with all of your other stuff going on?
I didn't. Like, I was approached by AMI because I was
Okay.
like really another do we have enough podcasts? But AMI, which is the broadcaster that
Right.
that does Fashion Disc, they had approached me with an offer to do the podcast. So, having a producer and somebody
Yes.
behind the scenes to do the editing definitely helped make that decision easier. And I also felt like it would free up a little bit of time maybe from writing to do other things. I don't know that that's necessarily true. It's like it's a new challenge,
Yeah.
and it's definitely scary because as a writer, I like to be very intentional about what I say, and in interviews or on the
Right.
podcast, it's like it's
Mhm.
always that feeling that you have, when you drink too much and the next day you're like, what did I say? Be like
Oh,
that,
so
right?
often I'll
And I'm
hear
not
like, that was
editing
a good
it.
question. Oh no, you don't edit it. You don't have anything to do. Now you do have a partner on it, which is neat. But it is funny because you'll get something, someone will say something like, that was a great question. You have no memory of it at all.
Totally. Yeah.
So you'll have
Or
to go
you
back.
like beat yourself up for all the ums and ahs or things
Oh,
that you say too often.
I'll have my editor say, I'll ask, how many ums did you have to edit? He's like, a lot. I'm like, I'm trying so hard to get better at that. So
That's good that he
it
takes
is
them out though, because I think it's trickier when you're doing video with audio.
for
right?
sure. For
Anyway.
sure. It is. But I think you're doing a great job with that. I think
Thank you.
it is really well. I love the tips and the tricks and the things that you did. My necklace I got, I love the necklace that you showed. It somehow it's somewhere. I don't know. We went at Christmas, we went up north. I'm like, where is my necklace? I wore it one time. So we'll see where it is. So it's beautiful. I would definitely go onto the podcast. I know you have it linked with, it was on the Christmas gifts or the holiday gifts.
That was a Revive necklace.
Oh,
Revive
yeah, it was
jewelry.
beautiful.
Yeah. They make
So-
really nice pieces, and they donate to a bunch of different causes involved. We're giving them free plug here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna have to see if they want to sponsor the podcast. I think it's funny when you get any free time. When I have like Wednesdays, I typically will say is my day to send letters, emails, things like that. And people will be like, oh, you have a day off. I'm like, not really. I did the podcast. I wanted to do it like 10 years ago. So I was just listening to different podcasts. So it wasn't like you where someone approached me. It was like, I started it. Now I'm starting to write letters and, to get sponsors and things like that. So it's a little different, but
you never have a day off when you're entrepreneurial. And I think so many of us with MS are entrepreneurial because we have to be, right?
Right.
It's like,
exactly.
It's a life hack to be able to work for yourself or make your own hours so.
Sure. But I think that you went into this at the perfect time, and doing the fashion and stuff, I think is the perfect time, because I still don't see that. I still don't see very much.
I mean, I also feel like it's 50 years too late, because things are really changing, but ideally we wouldn't need a show like Fashion Disc because people with disabilities would just be integrated into the culture.
Right. So when you started the show, tell me, now that it's been going and you're going into the second season of it, what would you say was the most exciting in the first season?
The most exciting.
I know you can even give me two if one is too hard.
I mean, it's really exciting to have an idea and to see it come to life and to actually see it become bigger than yourself, right?
Yeah.
So it's like my little idea kernel of whatever. And then suddenly it's like, it's not overnight, 'cause it takes a long, long time. But there is like a point where you're in a room with like 25 people and it's their job and they're all working on realizing your idea and they've all bought in and they're all contributing. And so that part was really, really exciting. And I think the reaction of the cast and crew was also really special. There's like guys working on this show who work in TV, camera guys or whatever, who just, you can tell they're so moved and they're thinking differently. And I mean, change is slow, but it's incremental. And just to be a part of that is, I mean, it's really great to feel like your suffering has some
Yeah.
meaning, you know, like,
Yeah,
yeah, that you can
absolutely.
kind of like turn it into something cool.
Right. Yeah. I can't, I really can't imagine being in that and just watching the people and everybody around you. What was, would you say the first season, what was the most frustrating or difficult thing that you had happen?
You know, there weren't really any hiccups in the
Wow.
first season. I mean, it was a real pleasant surprise to see how much the production company, who had never really worked with disability before, the efforts that they made to learn about the community and to educate themselves, and how much they
Wow.
listened, and how they made it such an awesome environment for all the participants. So, yeah, it was just a really good, great experience.
Wow. That's really neat. I mean, that's when you really know you're in your realm, you're in what you're supposed to be doing. I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. Okay, I'm taking you backwards now. We're going way back.
All right.
So when you were diagnosed in 2015,
2001.
2001?
Yeah. No,
Dang,
I started
girl.
blogging in
In
2015.
2015. Okay, so you were diagnosed just a little bit before me. I mean, after me, sorry.
Yeah,
A little
yeah.
bit
No, I'm
after
like,
me.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because I was diagnosed with rheumatoid first and then MS. So, so then you started blogging in 2015. So what were you doing after the diagnosis? What did they say? Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Move It or Lose It podcast, where you can again find us wherever you like your podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. Join us on that. And we can't wait to see you again. We're going to have a lot of exciting guests and working together. And as always, you'll hear us say at the end of every podcast, we are stronger together. So let's do it. Let's become stronger together. Have a great day.